You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Gearcast. Today, John Harris and I, along with Jason Tables, will be discussing fast, wide-aperture, wide-angle lenses. Also joining us is Neil Gershman, one of our top pro sales associates in the B&H Superstore, who some of you might know as that guy at the pro counter who really knows his stuff. The first part of the show, we're going to define what are wide-angle lenses, at what focal length they start, why you'd want a wider aperture, faster wide and ultra-wide-angle lens, talk about some of the applications, who uses them, why they would need them. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come back and then talk about the lenses that are available. And we have hundreds of them here, from 35 millimeter down to 14 millimeter, all of them f2 or faster. If you enjoy our podcast, and you are not currently a subscriber, head on over to iTunes during our break and subscribe. It's free. And a box of donuts says you're going to feel a lot better about yourself after you sign on. It means a lot to us when we see the numbers grow, because that means that we're doing a good job doing one of the things we love doing most, talking about picture taking. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for signing up, as we say around here. A special shout out today to Leopold Desage, one of our growing number of dedicated listeners. Thank you for your support and glad to know you like our show. Okay, next up, Al's Gearhead Pick of the Week. On August 21st, we have the Eclipse, or some of you like saying the Eclipse, coming up. And we have some very, very neat kits here for those of you who want to take pictures of it. A few weeks ago, we had the Eclipse podcast. If you didn't listen to it, it's there on iTunes. You can get it, a lot of great information. So the big deal we have here is the Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter f5 to 6.3 DGOS HSM contemporary lens solar eclipse kit for Canon EF and Nikon F. What you get is a Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter, which is a monster zoom. It contains an FLD and 3 SLD elements, a hypersonic motor for autofocusing, optical stabilizer with accelerometer. This is big stuff. And also, aside from the fact that it has huge magnification, it has a minimum focus distance of 110 inches, and it is splash and dust proof as well. And it comes with a 95 millimeter neutral density 5.4 filter.
It's a kit because it comes with that filter.
That's
right?
it. That's what makes it. Basically, it makes it safe to aim this thing at the sun. You just sold one of these, right?
I sold one of these yesterday too. He's a photographer and he's into the Eclipse, so he came by and took one and wanted to have some time to play with it, get used to it. Had some questions about it, so he's going to be working with that.
And you just said something really important too, in that we couldn't emphasize enough that if you're going to be photographing this eclipse, don't undo the box that afternoon and expect to just get up and running. You really should do a couple little tests, see how things work and everything else, right?
It goes for a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we talked a lot about that in that episode.
Yeah.
Practice, you know.
Today's topic, fast, wide aperture, ultra wide angle lenses. And actually, I want to qualify what we're talking about. These are lenses that are in 35 millimeter terms, are wider than 63 or 64 degree angle of view, which means 35 millimeters. So if you're shooting with 35 millimeter is where wide angle starts. And we're only just going to be talking about lenses that are f2 and fast. We're talking about real fast ultra wide angle lenses and wide angle lenses. So let's start off a little question here. What is a wide angle lens? A wide angle lens, it's a lens with a focal length that's less than the diameter of the camera sensor, or in the case of film cameras, the borders of the film gate. And Neil, feel free to jump in if I say anything dumb or you have even a better description of it. Just as a point of reference, a full-frame 35 millimeter image measures 24 by 36 millimeter. The diameter is 43.3 millimeter, which means that for a normal lens for 35 is truly 43.3 millimeter. Now, if you go and ask for a normal lens for a 35 millimeter camera, it's going to be a 50, 55, or 58. Okay, and that's just the way they did it. And the bottom line is nobody ever made a 43.3 millimeter lens. Nobody. So, but that's where it is. So today we're talking about lenses with focal lengths shorter than 43.3 millimeter. Those are wides. And okay, history. For the longest time, if you shot with a 35 millimeter reflex camera, 35 millimeter lenses were as wide as they got. Wide angle lenses just really weren't applicable for reflex cameras. Wider non-rectilinear designs were available, but only for use with rangefinder cameras with shoe-mounted optical finders because the wide-angle lenses of the time poked so far into the camera body there was no room for a mirror. In the late 40s and 50s, lens manufacturers began figuring out ways of widening our fields of view. The modern rectilinear, retrofocused wide-angle lenses, as we know them today, were introduced by Ingenue, a French company in the early 1950s. They were designed for motion picture cameras, but they were quickly adapted to work with mirror reflex housings found in film SLRs and now DSLRs. By the time the 60s came around, wider lenses, 20 millimeter, 18, 15, even a gorgeous distortion-free 13 millimeter rectilinear lens by Nikon came to market. Lots of luck if you could find those right now, the 13. And they had edge-to-edge sharpness, and they were relatively distortion-free. Today we have lenses as incredibly wide as the Voigtlander Heliar Hyper wide 10 millimeter f5.6 spheric, which delivers an astoundingly sharp, evenly illuminated, and near distortionless 130-degree angle of view, and it's available in Sony E-mount and M-mount and a few others. I shot with it. It's insane. You got to be careful with that lens. You could hurt yourself.
Those around you, right?
And those around me, that's right. Okay. But for today's show, we're going to limit our discussion to the fastest of the genre, meaning wide-angle and wide-angle lenses with maximum apertures of f2 or faster. And these are, in my book, the fun lenses. So yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
just throw this out. Why is there a need to get fast with a wide-angle lens, especially an ultra-wide?
Okay.
Are we jumping ahead, or is that
No,
a good place
go.
to start?
You want
I
to
think
jump on it?
mostly for interiors, people shooting outside at night. They want a fast lens. Often wide-angle lenses are very popular for landscape. You don't need the fast lens for that so much. You're on a tripod. You could use a longer exposure, not a problem. So I think more for interiors, the speed is always desirable. And then also for shooting at night, lower light.
I mean, if you think about it, if you like the 14 millimeter 1.8 Sigma Art lens or anything f2, 1.8, 1.4, anything like that, if you're shooting at night, you don't have to pump the ISO up. Your exposures are shorter. You have a lot more control, and you don't have to worry about noise as much and a lot of the problems that arise with night photography.
With higher ISO.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. So that's a big advantage there. That's where it's always good to have. It's the kind of thing. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
You could always stop down to 16 if you need to. It's no
So
problem.
basically, the reasons that we would want any lens to
And-
be fast.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's interesting. You say you could always stop down to 15. Lots of people come into the store, and they have this concept that if it's a 1.8 lens, that's it. It doesn't go anywhere else. It's always
Yeah.
1.8 lens, or it's always 2.8 lens. They don't realize that they can buy the lens. They can also stop down when they need to.
So, and also, you say, what's the advantage of it? With lenses in general, okay, almost universally, the sharpest aperture, the point where the lens resolves the most detail, is about 2.5 to 3 stops down from wide aperture. Now, if you have an f4 lens and you want to get the best, so now you're going from 4, 5, 6, 8, you're at f11 to get maximum, whereas if you have an f2 lens, you're now down to what, f4?
So, yeah, that's the advantage. Is even if you're not going to shoot wide open to get the maximum aperture, you'll get your sharpest point at still a wider aperture, so you're getting more light.
Yeah, and you could always stop
And
down
that's
for more depth.
always the problem.
Exactly.
Occasionally people need filters. They have too much light, but much more often there's not enough light. That's always the big issue.
And that's
so the fast
also
lenses.
two things. Also, focusing with wide-angle lenses, if it's an f3.5 or 4 lens or even a 5.6, focusing can be tricky. Even though you have a lot of latitude, you can still miss the shot. Even though you think everything is in focus at f11, f16, you could still miss it. So with a wider aperture, it's a brighter screen. It's easier to zoom in and actually find focus on your subject.
Right. And the wider aperture on an SLR makes it it's not easy to manually focus when
Right.
you're focusing on an SLR. So the wide aperture, for that reason, also makes it easier if you're manually focusing. A lot of lenses are manual focus. The mirrorless cameras, it's much easier. You have focus aids, focus assist, but on the SLRs, those don't exist, and it's much harder. So if you've got a lens that's a slow lens, a smaller aperture, then it's harder to see. It's making it harder to focus.
Yeah. And the past few weeks, I've used the Firin 20mm f2 from Tokina, which is really, really nice. And and then I had a week with the Sigma 14mm f1.8, which is crazy. And focusing very, very close with those is magnificent. And I own several ultra wides, and they're all 3.5 to 5.6. And I was taking pictures with those two lenses I cannot take with slower lenses, because by opening them up, my depth of field is narrower. I can do real selective focus, which is harder to do with a wide-angle lens, especially, you know. So
Because everything's in focus.
everything's in focus. So it gives you a lot more creative abilities and a different visual dynamic. So there's a lot of arguments to be had for it.
And what about disadvantages then?
Weight, size.
Price.
Price
Generally
too.
speaking, wider angle lenses are more expensive, more difficult to make, so the cost is higher. Especially when you get to the wide aperture lenses.
Okay. So basically, they're going to get bigger too. I mean, that's another issue. They get heavy. They get
In fact, one of the
heavy.
things that concerned me using the 14-1.8 I had it on my Sony A7R II, is that usually with a large, heavier lens, they put a collar on it so you don't have to put a stress on the camera mount, the lens mount. And honestly, I was not real comfortable about hanging that 14-1.8 off the front of my Sony camera on a tripod, mounting it
on the camera.
Because that was just too much weight.
Yeah.
And I really handheld it from just about everything, and everything came out very well, I might add.
Yeah.
So
there are actually supports that you can get, like a lens support, that goes
in my
underneath
review.
like
I actually added that, and I made suggestions. We do sell additional supports that you can do that. So that's
and
important.
with some of those lenses, that's good to have.
Yes,
like you said,
even the 24-70s, they have a lot of weight. These lenses weigh about 2.5 pounds. That's a lot of stress to throw on a lens mount. So I think that's a good idea.
Maybe I can ask this question before we start getting into the talking points we have here. But what is the how do I phrase this? The evolution of these lenses. How come it's taken to this point to get wide-angle lenses with such a wide aperture? Is it just something that they needed a technological breakthrough? Is it a matter of price and people are now more interested? Or why are we,
I think
why is it
lens
to this point?
technology
I think
itself, the manufacturing, they have especially with computers, that was a major thing. That's what brought in the spheric surfaces and all this. We have the technology to do it now.
I agree. I think it's technology. I mean, just in general, the much improvement over the years in distortion in the lenses, barrel distortion, and that's improved. And it's just in the manufacturing process, so the technology has come along. I tell people all day long, just like in the cameras, some people don't think about it. There are certain things that they think it's the same. A lot of the old lenses are beautiful, but you'll probably find more distortion, more likely in some of the older lenses than the newer lenses.
Yes.
Because the technology has improved tremendously in the lenses as well as in the cameras.
Another big problem with digital cameras early on was that if you went wider than 35, you had all kinds of color fringing and smearing and all kinds of weird stuff because
You still get some of that weird
you
stuff.
still do. However, like for instance, I have a 15mm Voigtlander, the version 3. The first two were real sketchy, but that lens works beautifully on, at least with the Sony A7R II, where I don't get color fringing. It's really clean, and also less vignetting, much less. So that's another thing with design. They've managed to keep the edges brighter because I think if you use a lot of the earlier lenses, they get dark in the corners.
I've had some customers coming in and they were asking for lenses that vignetted. They like the look. They had old Leica and they like that kind of lens. They wanted it to vignette. And I said, usually people are trying to avoid that now. It's hard to find. I said, maybe Photoshop. You can always do that.
Is there one company that's kind of leading the way with wide aperture, wide angles at this point?
Ooh.
I think across the board, certainly Nikon, Canon, they have their share, but Sigma is just doing amazing things with lenses these days. Wide aperture and, general 1.4 lenses for full frame. And they have these 2 zoom lenses for the APS-C sensors, the 18 to 35. That's 1.8 zoom lens, 1.8. That's it. You can't find any others. And a 50 to 100, so that not a wide
and
angle.
also they also make the 24 to 35 f2.
Right.
Which is pretty extraordinary.
Right. And it's a great lens. People are funny. I've had some people complaining it's not enough range. Of course, everyone wants more. They want a lens to go from 14 to 300 and be f2.8.
Exactly. No, I prefer 1.4, and I want to make sure they can fit into my coat pocket. Okay.
I say it's probably technically possible, but you wouldn't be able to lift it.
It'd be very tense.
Is there any way to determine how big a lens will be, a wide-angle lens, based on its aperture? I know they get bigger as the apertures get wider, the max aperture, but is there a way to say, hey, it's just going to be too big when you go to that point?
It's funny. I've seen some lenses that have ridiculously wide apertures, and you look at them and say they're not big lenses.
Right.
I can't identify them right now, but I've seen them.
I think as a general rule, the wider the aperture, the bigger the lens is going to be.
It has to be.
I tell people all the time also that
element, right?
They're looking for fast zoom lenses. 3 things: big, heavy, and expensive, all the time.
Yeah.
There are some exceptions. I mean, if you're looking at prime lenses, there are certain you can compare Nikon and Canon 51.4 to let's say Sony's 51.4, which is much bigger, or Sigma's 51.4, which is much bigger.
And then also, what is it that the Zeiss they make one? It's like a $5,000.
Yeah,
which one?
Otis.
The Otis.
Okay.
Okay.
Those are huge.
Yeah,
they're huge.
Yeah. I think it's filled with concrete. I mean, I think it's big. It's big and heavy.
Yeah, they're big and heavy.
Nice, yeah. Okay. I'm done with the questions.
Okay, other reasons to justify it. Depth of field. Okay, with these faster lenses, you have much narrower depth of field, especially close up. You could really isolate. I was amazed how much I could isolate something very close up, a subject, and blow it away from the background, even foreground, which is something I wasn't used to with slower ultra wides. Once you get a 4 to 5, 6, everything's much more in focus. So that's a difference. You could separate it, and the dynamic range, the visual dynamics is just huge. I just really like the look of it.
Yeah, and that's obviously something super important. If you're going to go with a wide aperture, you do that. You can't do it otherwise. So,
no, and you could always stop down, but you can't. There's a limit to what you could open up.
Also growing in popularity for video. The wide angle and fast is again, fast is always good.
Yes.
More light is always better. But for video, there's more demand for wider lenses as well.
And absolutely, that's just that much more control you have.
Yeah.
So that's a real important thing. And with depth of field, also when you open up to the wider apertures, the bokeh, the quality of the out of focus highlights, the specular highlights on a lot of these lenses is just really pretty. It just melts away. I've gotten some really impressive images. I've been blown away by what I saw. Filters could be a problem.
Filters definitely could be
Some
a
of
problem.
these you can't do. Some of them do have filter threads, but be aware that wider than 20 millimeter, you got to be careful of polarizers. It won't be total. You can have a dark part of the sky and other part. Now you could fake it sometimes. If you have clouds in the sky, you can sometimes play around with it and sort of have the bright spot where a cloud will be and still punch the blue, but it
doesn't
not
cover
even.
that wide
No,
angle.
past 20 past 90-degree angle of view, you're out of luck.
Right. And most of these lenses are going to have a convex front.
Many of
They
them.
vary. Some do. Some don't.
Some of them are actually impressively flat. But filtering in general, if you can, make sure that it's a narrow,
slim filter.
Slim filter.
A lot of the filters now, they used to have B&W, for example, used to make a slim filter, Hoya. Now they're all
pretty
slim.
much all slim.
Yeah,
they have
they're
to
all
be.
slim. But you still have, with the ultra wide lenses, there's always that risk. Somebody's got a UV filter on front of the lens. They might need to take that off when they put a polarizing or something else. And polarizing is their own issues, but it's something else, even a neutral density filter, whatever they're using, variable neutral density for video, you start to vignette.
And also, that's a good point. And some of these lenses, by the way, have rear filter slots, so you could actually put them in behind or the elements. So they have a little, it makes it a little bit easier to do. Another thing you have to be careful with, I've noticed, and I noticed this most when I was using the 10 millimeter Voigtlander, make sure the front of the lens surface is clean, because when you stop that 10 millimeter or even a 12 millimeter down to f16, guess what? The dust on the front element comes into focus. That's called depth of field. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I found you really have to be careful.
A quick question.
Yeah.
Do you have better luck with vignetting with circular filters or with the square on the holder in general? I've heard it's better with if you use
the holder, the drop-in filters are better. They're more versatile. It's and quality-wise, it's better to use that. Again, it depends on the lens. With the ultra-wide, you really have to be careful. You can get a bigger filter. They make adapters to attach that filter holder that are for wide angles. So it compensates as much as it can. But if you start, some people they'll have use step-up rings or something instead of getting the right adapter, and you start to bring that holder further away, and then you can have vignetting for sure.
Vignetting, right.
Yeah, if you ever look at the butterfly shades they put onto a lot, there's a reason why they got so many cutouts, because these lenses see so much. You got to be really careful.
But people like those. They like the way they look, so they want that hood, even though I keep telling them, for that lens, the hoods are dedicated for the lens. They make them specifically to get the maximum coverage. But no, I like that hood. I like the way it looks. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I'll grant for those things, okay? Whether you like the look of them or not, you have to be careful. A lot of these lenses, especially the ones with the bulbous front elements, it is so easy to scratch those. I mean, I once trashed a 16mm Zeiss lens I wish I had a shade on it.
Square trait.
Yes. Now they tell me.
But it's true that they're heavy, they're front heavy, they hang down, and they bump into stuff.
Yes, I mean, it's inevitable. Size and weight, we already talked about. The wider the aperture, the bigger the lens, the heavier. So that's a given. More of these lenses now have image stabilization, which it might sound silly, but the truth of the matter is, I think especially with the higher resolving power cameras and video, you want it, you have it. So that's a feature that's built into a lot of these lenses now. DSLR versus mirrorless lenses. If a lens is designed for a DSLR, it's going to be bigger. There are some smaller lenses for the mirrorless counterparts. He's shaking his head. Go ahead, throw it in there. Go ahead.
I kind of disagree. I think that the size of the lens is more related to the size of the sensor, not to the camera.
We actually had this conversation, and I agreed with you earlier, and I just read the same thing anyway. Yes, you're right.
If you look at the fast zoom lenses, the 24-70, 70-200. From Sony, they're just as big and heavy as the Canon or the Nikon 70-200 or Tamron or whatever. So basically, they're the same size. The size of the lens is more determined by the sensor size.
True.
I think. Yeah. That's
Points taken. By the way, you mentioned 24 to 70 millimeter. One thing I want to do before anybody out there says they're not talking about 24 to 70 millimeter. Well, the reason why is because we have about 20 of them on the B&H website. They're f2.8, and we said we're sticking to f2. And yes, all of those 24-70 2.8s are amazing. I don't think there's a bad one out there. Great lens, great range, nice and fast for that focal length, but it ain't part of today's topic.
Yeah, that's another show.
So we'll do a show on 24 to 70 2.8s, okay?
Sure,
we'll have to work on that one.
But going back to mirrorless, I mean, are the options available in APS-C for this type of wide angle?
Absolutely.
I mean,
okay. Yeah, we have plenty of choices for those.
There's ultra wides for
APS-C
Olympus and Panasonic and for Fuji. Also for Sony for the smaller sensor and for the bigger sensor. Not as much in the ultra wide prime lenses. They're still building that lenses. The old Sony A mount lenses. There's plenty of them.
But
the E mount, they're still no. The zoom lens is 1635, is f4. They have 28 f2. They have a few, but it's not as readily available. Even for the small sensor, the 10 to 18 is f4 also. So there are wide angle lenses, but not that fast. There's 23 from Fuji that's f2, not ultra wide, but there's also a zoom that's f4.
Okay.
I think so far we might have given the impression a lot of these lenses are expensive, and I think it's important to point out that no, they're not. After our break, we're going to come back and go over some of the options that are out there. But what's very interesting is that there are many price points available for these lenses. Construction, plastic, or as you like to say, polymer, versus weather-sealed metal alloy. And there are also I think some of the polymer lenses are also weather-resistant.
Pretty pricey.
And they can also be pretty pricey too. But that's one of the things too. The lesser priced lenses tend to be a little bit more plastic. Vignetting can be an issue. Some lenses will vignette more than others. The corners are darker. And that's correctable. okay, in most cases.
Well, speaking of price, I'm looking at a couple of the new Sigmas here. The 14 millimeter f1.8, that's $1,600 lens.
Yeah.
But when you go to the 20 millimeter f1.4, that's a $900 lens. And these are all Sigma for DSLRs. A Nikon AFS Nikkor 20 millimeter f1.8, that's a $800 lens. So
The prices are all around.
yeah,
They're all around.
they're not cheap though.
No,
I
they
mean,
do jump around. And the build quality, the advantage always for buying a Nikon or a Canon lens for your camera is that it's made by Nikon, it's made by camera, they've designed it, they've designed the electronics. You're much less likely to ever have communication issues.
That is a big thing. Yes.
So that's one good solid reason. That being said, some of the lenses, the Sigmas that you just mentioned, they're outstanding lenses. So you can't write them off just because they're not made by Canon and Nikon. They're great lenses. And Tamron's making a few good lenses as well.
Well,
and Tokina has always,
and Tokina,
well
the
made.
Furon is that's their version of their answer to the art lenses and from Sigma.
Yeah.
They're not made by the main manufacturers as far as camera companies, but boy, those are very good lenses and they're serious about them.
Generally not inexpensive, but
Right.
often a little less expensive than the brand names. So really great values.
Yep, absolutely.
I'd like to get into some of the applications and specific types of photography that these lenses are more or less valued for. And I know we spoke about that earlier, but I have one question. And I was looking at the Milvis, the Zeiss Milvis line, and they have 15 millimeter, 18, 21 millimeter. They're all f2.8 though. Now, what would be why wouldn't they go down to f2? What would be the disadvantage for them other than it's too expensive to manufacture and sell? Or is that
My guess is size, weight, and they may not be happy with the
cost.
image quality.
Yeah.
And cost, for sure.
Technically, it gets more difficult the wider you get.
Yeah. The wider and faster, those are challenges.
But there are
Optically,
15, 18, so they get pretty wide as well. And the Zeiss lenses certainly, I don't know that price is the problem because they've got some lenses, those Otis lenses, for example, are crazy, $4,500. They're big, really big numbers.
So the reasons would then tend to be the practical reasons of price and size as opposed to optical or technological issues that they can't break through.
I would guess, just kind of like, why can't you make a 14 to 300 zoom lens at f2.8 even,
Right. Okay. I'm just kind of curious about this. And that goes back to that question about evolution and, why we're seeing these fast lenses now.
And also keep in mind that, early on, these were hand-ground glass optics. Now they're using a lot of composite materials, and even some of the finest lenses, they're using some synthetics because they can create lens surfaces in composite materials they can't do with pure glass. So there's a lot of optical
With
composites.
total consistency.
Yes. So there's a lot
coatings
of
are
other little
better.
things, and the coatings are
better,
different.
for
Yes.
sure.
All right.
I wonder also if the popularity of astrophotography now has fueled their interest in the ultra wide, fast.
No doubt.
At night with lower ISO and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the. In fact, I was reading somebody's little press thing. They're talking about that.
Yeah.
It cuts the exposure time down. You don't have to pump your ISOs. Your noise is down. Well,
Yeah. And also you can get those sharp Milky Way kind of shots where if you have a long exposure, you're going to get the little Mike and Ike
trail
candies.
So that leads us to talking about some applications and night photography, astrophotography clearly is something that would be find a big benefit.
Architecture, exterior, interior.
Okay. So, and again, the reason being is that if it's a dim interior, you're going to be able to get more light and you can stop and get a more accurate image or
That's
clearer
part
image.
of it.
I mean,
That's part of it. Absolutely. Yeah.
okay. So interiors, architecture, night photography,
Of course, landscape.
landscape.
I think that's the biggest need, the biggest request for ultra-wide lenses for landscape.
What about VR? Is it
I haven't had a lot of people. Occasionally, someone's looking for something for 360 photography for VR or something.
I mean, I don't
which
know
is
if that's
now
the
they're
best
looking at
application
the
for it.
cameras more.
I don't know.
They're looking at the 360 cameras.
Right.
That
Okay.
shoot, so they don't have to.
So why, in the sense of landscape, would an f1.8 be better than an f2.8?
Not necessarily. Only if you want to shoot with a wider aperture. If you want to get some sense of depth,
Foreground, yeah.
right? So then it would be easier with a wider aperture, or closing down again. You don't have to worry about the time because you're on a tripod,
especially if you're polarizing the scene too. If your lens first starts at 4.5 and you stop down a few stops for resolving power, and then you throw either a neutral density or a polarizer on there, you've lost a lot of light. You can't see much through that finder, whereas if you have an f2, 1.8, 1.4 lens, you have a better chance of being able to still see what's going on through the finder, and your exposures are shorter. Again, it keeps coming back to that.
How about underwater photography? Any, and it's a small niche, but...
Well, underwater,
pretty much only wide-angle lenses for underwater photography.
Right.
That's I don't really do a lot of that, but yes, the faster the better is always better.
Every bit of speed helps under there.
Everything, but wide-angle lenses are much preferred for underwater photography.
And if you're going to shoot the Milky Way from under the water, no two ways about it.
Perfect.
You need an f1.8 lens, 1.4. I wouldn't even touch f2 at that point.
So what applications is it does it make no difference for? I mean, obviously, your portrait photography,
passport photography.
Passport photography. Yeah. I mean, wide angle, a lens in itself is not a choice for portrait photography. We realize that, but
no. Actually, this is no joke. No joke. I used to do a lot of environmental portraits for editorial stuff and corporate stuff, and I can tell you that I used to regularly use 24 millimeter, 20 millimeter, and even 15 millimeter for environmental portraits, where I position the person central to the frame, not on the corners, and I could photograph them in their workplace, at their desks, in the most strangest things. But and that's another thing. On my last item here, my little talking point, to talk about discipline, and that these lenses do need a discipline to use them well. Everything looks very cool when you look through it, but if you're going to be looking at one distorted picture after another, it gets kind of old real fast. And I think one of the real things that I love about these is when I could use the lens to capture a really powerful photograph that doesn't scream wide angle. And that's the challenge of using these things. Taking a good picture doesn't say, oh, wow, it's because it's wide angle. No, say it's wow, but not understand that it's because of the focal
So
length.
you're putting the subject in the center to reduce the distortion.
Yes. If you keep with these lenses, if you keep them centralized, and if you, again, don't go 7 inches from their nose, keep them 2-3 feet away, have them be part of a scene, they're fine. The edges might get distorted a little bit depending on what's going on and how close it is to the lens, but I could tell you right now, I've taken some really, what I think are very good portraits using ultra wides, and my clients were happy too. So it wasn't just me.
Yeah. And also for sort of like I don't know what you call it, like a kind of environmental portrait, but like a landscape with portrait, and you have somebody in there, and then you're getting the advantage for the landscape of the wide angle, and you got somebody in there.
Another great application I saw a few times in the past month, some incredible surfing shots at sunset where people are in the tube and the sun is setting at the other end and you're surrounded by a wall of water, and you could only do some of that stuff with an ultra wide. Yeah, you could do it with a 50 millimeter, but I saw some ultra wide angle stuff that was phenomenal. And again, if it's faster, you're able to sync a little bit better and everything else.
You get that sense of place.
Yes.
You really can feel that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. I guess just to summarize, then the faster is always better, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. If you can do it, it's nice to know it's there. You don't always need it, but it's nice to know it's there. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we come back. We're going to go through all of the wide angle groups that we have here. We have a whole list of lenses that are out there. Fast wide angle lenses. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, #BHPhotoPodcast.
We are back. John, before we start going through all of the focal lengths and what's out there for fast wide angle and ultra wide, you pulled out some of the newer lenses in this group. What are they?
Okay, yeah, this is just from the B&H site. Sigma has a brand new 14 millimeter f1.8, which is part of their art series.
And I just did a review on that, which came out the other day on Explorer. If you want to see a review of it and see the kind of pictures it takes, it's out there.
Also relatively new is the Sigma 20 millimeter f1.4, also Canon, Nikon, Sigma, and the 24 millimeter f4, both part of the art series. And again,
24 millimeter 1.4.
Did I say what?
You said a 4.
F4,
Yes.
1.4.
1.4, yes.
Sorry. Nikon has a 24 millimeter f1.8G lens. They also have a 20 millimeter f1.8G. Relatively affordably priced lenses. I also noticed not brand new, but a Sony Distagon T 24 millimeter f2 ZA SSM lens. That's the new ones.
Okay, why don't we go through, starting with the 35 millimeter class, what's out there. 35 f2, that's the entry level to our discussion. We have 13 of them, starting with the Yongnuo. How do you pronounce that?
I pronounce it Yongnuo.
Okay, Yongnuo.
I hear lots of different pronunciations, but that's how
Yeah, that works for me. The Yongnuo YN cost $87. That's a 35 millimeter f2 lens, okay? We cannot tell you how good or bad it might be. There's also the Mitakan Zongi Creator, which is $149.95 or $160, $160 depending on the mount. Pentax makes one, so does Canon. Zeiss. Zeiss makes two. They make a Distagon T-Star for $749 and a Milvus for $1179. And also for 35 f2, there is the Sigma 24 to 35 millimeter f2 DG HSM art lens, which is $1,000, $999. That is an amazing zoom range for wide angle, and at f2 is phenomenal. I imagine you've gotten a lot of people asking about that.
You're putting together, again, a lot of people looking for more range, but you've got an f2 aperture. So people just don't realize that it would just get so cumbersome to put more range. There are no other lenses other than the couple of Sigmas, that one that's f2 and a couple that are 1.8 that we mentioned before, 1835 and 50 to 100. There are no zoom lenses faster than 2.8. That's it. So it's just an amazing thing in and of itself. So again, it's sort of like the complaint that it's not enough range. You've got a zoom lens that's a f2. What's the complaint? It's fairly heavy. It's a big, sizable lens, which you'd kind of expect. But it's a very good lens.
If you carry a couple of, like a 24, 28, and a 35, and even f2, f2.8, you got more weight, and you're carrying a lot of weight there.
Absolutely.
But this kind of lens, I think, is ideal for several things. Street shooting, it's great. All right. Event photography, weddings. I mean, you have a 24-35 and you're at a wedding reception, you can capture an awful lot.
Right.
Or any kind of event thing, grip and grin situations. It's a perfect lens.
Yeah.
And those situations is nice.
Those situations are really good to have that fast aperture. Maybe you don't need to use a flash as much, and you've got enough lens. And the wide angle covers a lot, as you said. So it's really, really ideal for those kinds of situations as well.
They really hit it on that. When I saw that lens announced, I said, no, that got me.
But what about the 18 to 35? Sigma has a f1.8, right?
That's 1.8. That's for APS-C sensor.
Okay. All right. That's right.
So it is amazing. Again, if it were for a full frame, it would have to be much bigger.
Right?
Oh,
it would be
yes.
huge.
Yeah. Lift with your knees. Okay. All right. So from there, we go a little bit faster to 35 1.8, and we have a lot of choices on this. For full frame, Nikon makes one. They make one for the hold on. Yeah, there's Nikon, Tamron SP, and also there's a lot of, we're talking about full frame 35. If you want to go APS-C and have the same angle of view of a 35 millimeter lens, Rokinon makes a 21.8 for micro four third and APS-C. Olympus for micro four thirds has a 17.18. That's the equivalent of a 35.
That's a nice lens. That's a good lens.
And here we have the Sigma 18 to 35 1.8 APS-C coverage. And Sony has this Sonar 24 1.8 ZA. That's for APS-C, and that is a 35 millimeter equivalent also. So again, we're talking 35, but if you're using a smaller format, there are a lot of lenses available that will do the equivalent job. 35 1.4, we have a lot of good options, 18 of them. For full frame, you start with Bauer. There's a 35 1.4. It's the same as the Sanyang and Rokinon. They cost $300 to $400, $479 depending on the mount and which one it is. Sigma makes a gorgeous 35 1.4 art lens. Voigtlander makes a 35 1.4 in an M mount, single or multi-coated, depending on what kind of aesthetic look you want. Nikon 35 1.4, an old manual focus AIS that's been around for a million years, a really nice lens. If you're shooting small, we have more. The Sony 134G, the Distagon they make. Nikon makes an AFS 3514 for autofocus. Canon has one. Zeiss has one for their ZF series, ZF2, which is for Nikon, and I believe they make a Canon version. We have the Milvus 3514. And then lights, the Sumlux, the TL3514 is spheric. And they also make for their M camera 3514 spheric. So there's a bunch of them. And if you're shooting, again, 3514 equivalent for smaller format, for micro four thirds, SLR Magic 2614 toy lens. APS-C, Rokinon makes a 21 1.4. Fujifilm, for their cameras, they have a 2314. If you're shooting for micro four thirds, Panasonic has a 12 millimeter 1.4, which will also give you the same angle of view as a 35 millimeter 1.4 in full frame. Moving right along, 28 millimeter 2.8, 5 of them in full frame from Sony, Voigtlander, Zeiss, Leica, 2 from Zeiss. The Otis is there too. A 28 1.8, Nikon makes them, and Canon. They both have 2 lenses. They cost $5 and change, between $500 and $600. If you want a little bit faster than 28 1.8, you have 28 1.7 from our friends at Mitagon Zongi, the Free Walker 24 millimeter 1.7. That's for micro four thirds. And there's also, what else we have here? For 28 millimeter 1.4, this is getting to sound like raisin counting. 3 lenses, Nikon, Zeiss, and Leica. 24 f2. The lists are getting shorter here, folks. Hang on. Just bear with us. 24 f2. There's, for micro four thirds, there's 12 millimeter f2 from Samyang and Rokinon. And Nikon makes a 24 f2 manual focus. I've owned 3 of them over the years. I've always loved that lens. It's a very nice, well-built manual focus lens. 24 1.4, 6 of them. Bauer, Rokinon, and Samyang make their own versions of it. Sigma makes an art lens, which is gorgeous. Fuji for APS-C, they have a 16 millimeter 1.4. Canon has a 24 1.4L. Nikon makes an AFS 1.4 GED. And of course, Leica has a Sumlux spheric M lens.
Before we jump ahead, can I ask about some of the Canon? Let's talk about Canon and Nikon specifically. What are of these lenses? What are the workhorse pro lenses? I know you just mentioned the Canon L, and obviously the price is going to distinguish them a bit. But what are the big ones? Yeah,
the 24 1.4, 35 1.4, I would say in the wide angle class are right, and that's why Sigma went after that. Those were the first art lenses they came out with 24 and 35 1.4s. There's a reason why they did that, because those were that's their lunch. It's Canon and Nikon's lunch.
Yeah. Okay.
So for this class, those are the ones that would be in there.
21 millimeter.
21 millimeter f1.8 Voigtlander. They make one in an M mount. And if you have a micro four thirds, they make a Nocton 10.5 0.095. That is a high-speed 21 millimeter lens. That's nice. It's like $1,100. And of course, if you want to spend $7,500, Leica has a Sumlux M 1.4 spheric. Just letting you know.
It is available.
We have a couple of 20 millimeter f2s. There's a Tokina 20 millimeter f2 Furon, which I've shot with. Beautiful lens. Very, very nice. And of course, our friends at Mitagon Zongi have a 20 millimeter f2.5 f2 4.5x. That's that goofy lens that like snaps at you like a clam. That's a goofy lens, but it's great. $200. It's a lot of fun. Nikon 20 millimeter 1.8, $796. They make a 20 millimeter 1.4. This is Sigma. 20 millimeter 1.4 art lens. That is a gorgeous lens.
Well, that's one of the new ones.
That's one of the new pups. Yeah, I've not shot with that, but I'd like to see that one. IRX 15 millimeter 2.4 is $400. Why do we have that there? Because it's an IRX 15 millimeter. Okay, 2.4. We slipped one in there. And last but not least is the lens we've been talking about all day here. The Sigma 14 millimeter f1.8 DG HSM is amazing. As I said, I have 2 or 3 15 millimeter lenses. They're a lot slower. Shooting at f1.8 with this lens especially close up, was a whole other experience. A great, great lens.
So Neil, can I ask? Okay.
They're doing really well also with the wide angle lens. There's very little distortion in general.
Yeah.
Even the 12-24, it's not below 2, but it's f4, I think. But it's amazingly very little distortion.
By the way, something we should know about distortion is that one of the big issues. If you look at some of these lenses, the specs are very similar. And again, one will cost $300 and one will cost $2,000. And while the resolving power, the sharpness of a lot of these lenses, even wide open, is magnificent, and you stop them down, I think it's fair to say they're all really good. Some are amazing, but they're all really good. But the bigger difference between the less expensive and the more expensive has to do with distortions. As an example, we were talking earlier about the Rokinon Samyang, the 14mm 2.8s. Those lenses are incredible for how much they cost. However, if you're shooting architecture with them, you're going to have to do some post on it because straight lines, rather than being remaining parallel, look like Salvador Dali mustaches. There can be, especially towards the edge, a lot of what they call pin cushion distortion, barrel distortion, and mustache distortion. Now, these are all correctable.
That's your own term, I guess.
That's yeah. You heard it here first.
I should have seen that written.
No, it's actually been described.
Okay.
I didn't make that one up. I actually saw that, and it's really appropriate. These are correctable post, almost invariably. But you have to do work. But you could save yourself a lot of money. And again, the resolving power, they're sharp.
So, Neil, what do you see as big purchases over there? What are people asking for whether it comes to pro photographers or prosumers, enthusiasts, in terms of this class of lens?
They're looking at the Sigmas and more than the Canons and Nikons, and the Rokinon is very, very popular. Again, because of the price point, it's got a reputation of being very, very sharp, and in addition, a lot of people for video are manually focusing anyway, so they don't even care. It doesn't even matter.
And by the way, I think for landscape and general photography, the distortions, you really won't notice them.
Right.
Okay, it's only when you're doing things with straight lines like architecture. Then it becomes critical. But for a lot of shooting, it's in the background. You don't see it.
Yeah.
And the Lightroom corrections for the lens are very, very good.
Yeah. I mean, there's several different software packages that'll correct. As soon as you load the image in, it knows the lens, the camera, and it
You put the
just
lens
pops
in,
in
that's
there,
it.
corrects
It's
it. Yeah.
automatically,
Yeah. So it's very good.
For the people that have that lens, the Rokinon or the Samyang 14mm, is there a solution for filters that you recommend? Because it has that hood that doesn't come off.
Well, there are filters that mount from the back of the lens, the holder, that are going to be dedicated for each specific lens. I know that they're certainly available for the Nikons and the Canons and the Sigmas. I don't think I've come across any, although it doesn't mean they're not there for Rokinon. So it mounts from the back, and then they use a standard drop-in filter. Then for video, people use matte boxes. And
I
then
see,
they
so
can
it's from the
filter
back,
them.
so that gets around the problem of you not being able to screw anything onto the front of it.
Correct.
Right?
So you're not using UV filters for protection, but you can for other things, for neutral density or landscape stuff, graduated neutral density, you can use these for a lot of them. But they're specific because each lens is different. So you have to have they used to make the whole thing that was specific for the lens. Now they have the part that comes from the back, the mount is specific, and the holder is the same holder for anything, so for any of those lenses. And it's big, wide, 150mm filter.
Right.
There's one thing that we didn't mention in terms of application, which is street photography. And, that's something that I like to do. And a faster lens means you can up that shutter speed, and you can freeze those moments in the street that you might not otherwise be able to do. Yeah, the size is going to be a disadvantage, clearly, in the street, but that's one thing to consider.
Often the 35mm, which is not ultra wide, is often the preferred angle of view for street photography.
Right.
Some people want wider. Some people even like longer lenses. They want to be more in the background. They want to go from across the street, so they're looking for a longer lens. But generally, 35mm is somewhere around that range is more preferred. And that's easy to achieve. I mean, whether you're looking at a 24 for a crop sensor or the 35 on the full frame sensor.
And going forward, do you think we're going to be seeing more wide, ultra fast, or if you want to call them ultra fast, but something below f2? Is that something that there's going to be a new generation coming out from the big makers or some small manufacturers popping up to kind of make these? Is it that interesting, that important right now?
Well, they're always upgrading lenses, not all at one time, but occasionally they'll come out with new. Canon has this 11 to 24.
Yeah.
Not fast, it's f4, but that's for a full frame. Again, kind of amazing. I mean, with very little distortion. I mean, it's it's an excellent lens, not among the fast lenses, but so they're always looking, and again, technology improving, things are getting better, so they might want to make the same lens, and now it's a better version. Canon just came out with maybe a year ago with a 35-1.4. That's just astounding. I mean, the chromatic aberration is gone pretty much. It's an excellent lens. So, at one point it was like, well, the Sigma looks better than the Canon, but now that Canon is starting to look,
Well, I think it's one of the things that's causing lens manufacturers to up the game and make even better lenses than they've been doing already is the fact that a lot of the cameras have sensors that are just ridiculously high in resolving power, and the older generation don't hold up. I have lenses that I used to swear by that I look at now, I swear at them.
Yeah.
Because my camera out-resolves them. It just beats them.
That's absolutely true. And a lot of people have no understanding or no consideration for that. They could have a lens. It could be a really nice lens. Some of the lenses will work really well with the APS-C format, but on the full frame, not as much. So certainly when you get to the cameras with 30 and 36 and 42 and 50 megapixels, they just do not have the resolving power to maintain the sharpness and
well, a good example,
quality.
This is nothing new, because if you go back about 25 years ago, Leica started to redesign all their lenses. That's when they started producing all their spheric lenses. They started redesigning them. And why did they do that? Because Leica lenses were the best out there at the time and still are. But they realized that film technology was getting to a point where it was matching the quality of the lenses, and they had up their game to hold on to that edge that made them the best out there. So film did it, and now digital is doing it. And we all win for that because we have lenses that are just amazing now.
Yeah.
Okay, there you have it. Everything you need to know about ultra-fast, ultra-wide-angle lenses, all right? Everybody's exhausted by now. Anyway, Neil Gershman, thank you so much for joining us today. And Neil is in the store. He's one of our, like I said, our top pro sales guys. And if you're going to be in the store, head up to the counter, say hi, and pick his brains. In the meantime, if you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, head over to iTunes, sign up. It's free. And while you're there, take a look at all 80-plus episodes we have. How many episodes? We have a bunch of them.
This is number 84.
This is number 84. And they're all up there, and they're all accessible anytime you want, 24/7.
I imagine many people here that are listening are subscribers, but, encourage your friends to subscribe. Subscribing is the best way to help our show.
Yeah, offer them a few bucks. Tell them you give them $5. You'll buy them a Starbucks if they sign up, okay? And then drop us a note. We'll reimburse you, okay?
He's kidding.
that can get you into trouble.
I know. So there you have it. On behalf of John Harris, Jason Tables, and myself, thank you so much for tuning in today.